I tried to watch it and I couldn't get through it. Oof, that's a bad sign.
You really probably don't need an audience to get a first job as a developer.
And I'm like, well, I use PHP and I don't use Go. What now?
Aaron Francis, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast.
It is an honor to be back. We had fun the first time, and I guess it went well enough that I'm allowed to come back on.
You were among the select few that has been invited back for a second round. So yeah, I'm super excited. Somebody on Twitter just was like, "Hey, you should have Aaron on." I was like, "Well, I already had him on, but like we could just do it again."
Heck yeah. Yeah, so last time we talked about mostly PHP, which I'm always happy to talk about, but what do you want to do today?
Yeah, let's not do that again. My heart can only take so much PHP discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, so this time, yeah, I've got a few questions lined up. We're definitely going to get to SQLite. I think that's where we're going to spend most of our time this episode. SQLite's awesome. You've got an awesome SQLite course that's pretty new, so we'll talk about that. But first, you had this tweet.
I have a lot of tweets.
It hit me right in my feels because I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So my daughter is turning 4 in 5 months, and so far my experience with new dads and podcast listening is that once you have a child, your podcast listening goes up by about I don't know, 10 to 15x. Has that been your experience?
Oh yeah. Yeah, my kids are 3 and 8 months, and lots of walks, lots of drives, to like when nothing else is working, you throw them in the car and drive around. Yeah, lots of let's go to someplace and let the kids play, but it's like you're not gonna go climb into the playground, so you're just gonna sit there for an hour. So yeah, lots of extra time.
Yes, lots of good podcast listening. So I listen to all sorts of podcasts, but as of, I don't know, the last, again, probably 4 years, because I've been doing side businesses and side projects, and of course now boot dev is like my full-time thing. Listen to a lot of business podcasts, and you tweeted about the My First Million podcast, and you basically said, man, it would be great if this My First Million podcast was actually about earning your first $1 million instead of just interviewing billionaires. I want to hear more about what inspired that tweet.
Yeah, that would be so awesome. I thought about doing a show and I would call it My First Million, except it's actually My First Million. It's a great show. So I love their show. I find them equal parts informative and entertaining. I don't, sometimes they'll talk about stuff that I know about, and I'm like, wait, y'all don't know anything about this stuff. They'll talk about how AI works, and I'm like, hang on a second. I don't know how AI works, but I know it's not that. But still, they're super entertaining and super fun, and I really enjoy the show. However, I don't love that they have like literal billionaires come on, or people that are like, oh yeah, when I sold my first company for $400 million, then I just really got into meditation. And I'm like, why does this help me? This doesn't help me at all. Like, I have not made $400 million. I would love to hear how somebody, was working a job and then started a company and then made $1 million, or anything, honestly, anything under $5 million is way more like, yeah, that's what I want to know about. I would love to make $500 million, but I got to start somewhere. And I just, I was being partially silly, but extremely serious in another way that would be great content. I would listen to that for sure. So I don't know what to do with that. I dare not start another podcast, but boy, am I tempted,
You're on 2 podcasts now, right? Mostly technical, and what's the other one?
I don't know if I'm on another one.
Oh, you're not?
Oh, I do one. I do a sporadic one, Database School, that is just like interviewing database people. But I used to be on one with Andrew Culver called Framework Friends, which was awesome, so fun. And I used to be on one with Colleen Schnettler called Hammerstone, and it was so fun. And I just like them. And I listen, like, if you're an indie developer that has a podcast, there's like a 98% chance I listen to your show. Some of them I've listened to for like more than 10 years. Like, I feel like the TechZing podcast and Bootstrapped Web are 2 that I've listened to since I was just a young man. And now we're still listening to it. So I just can't get enough of that kind of content.
I need to check some of those out because, so I listened to every episode of the Indie Hacker podcast. It was like 300 episodes ish by the time they kind of shut down. And now My First Million is kind of my guilty pleasure because, like, to be honest, so Sam and Sean, they're the guys that run that podcast. They are hilarious and entertaining, like you said. Like, I love listening to it. But I think I just it's basically just fun. Every couple episodes I'll get like a little bit of like a business or marketing insight, but it's like I feel like some of the other podcasts I've listened to, like Indie Hackers, Startups for the Rest of Us, they're not quite as entertaining. Correct. But there was like a lot more kind of informative content. Yep. And here's my theory as to why My First Million has shifted to I
love a theory. I love a good theory, so tell me.
Because it started and Sean was interviewing people who had just earned $1 million. So it's like, bootstrappers and people that are just starting to get success. I think they're suffering from success, like DJ Khaled, in the sense that like they've gotten so big as a podcast that in order to like filter the guests down, they've had to like go up market almost. And so it's like they're talking about Mr. Beast and they're talking about people that own private jet companies. Yep. And it might be either I feel like it's a filtering problem or it's just that like those guys have become so successful that talking about $1 million isn't interesting anymore because they're both worth like 10 million plus.
Yeah, totally. I don't think they can speak to it anymore. I don't think they wouldn't be interested. It wouldn't be genuine. And so I think they are the wrong hosts to do it. But I love hearing about their basketball camp where Mr. Beast is there and like these other unspoken billionaires that they can't even name. And it's like, we just talked about how to run our companies. And I'm like, that's just not where I'm at. And I agree, Startups for the Rest of Us is great and super tactical. That's another one that I've listened to for like more than 10 years. But the entertainment factor of My First Million is so high. And I just think there's so much room for like more. At the end of the day, like whether it's YouTube or podcasts or whatever, people want to be entertained. And that's the hard part is like, if you're going to make it grow, you got to be entertaining and sneak in the stuff that like you want to communicate, which is like, I'm sure Rob Walling wants to communicate tactics and strategies. You got to sneak that in around the entertainment because the entertainment is what brings people in. So Sean and Sam don't care one iota about what I think, but I would love to hear them scale it down a little to like a little more normies.
I'd like them to throw us a bone every episode or two. The problem is I know that it's bad. It's like objectively bad media advice. Like what they're doing is definitely like working and growing, growing the brand and everything. So it's like really hard to play armchair quarterback. Yeah. Here's my podcast. I just want what I want. Yeah. They're successful and happy, but I just want different content. So
which is funny because that's what every YouTube comment that every time I make a YouTube video, it's like, hey, great, thanks for the video, make something different. And I'm like, I don't want to do something different. And so, now I'm the guy telling them to change their fundamental strategy. So I recognize the irony there.
Yeah. It's interesting building like media companies or media brands that are so close, or I should say like let's just call it like the edutainment space, right? So like you could argue this podcast, Backend Banter, mostly technical, right? Your podcast, My First Million, these are all like edutainment podcasts. It's not just like comedians being funny, but you've got to like choose where you want to be on this scale of like how entertaining you are versus like how much education you provide. Yep. And you and I both have courses, right? You've got High Performance SQLite is your latest thing. I've got Boot Dev. And the interesting thing to me is I think as you like slide that scale up on the entertainment factor, you can expand your reach a lot.
Yes.
My problem is I'm not funny, so like I actually don't have the ability to like move that farther along.
That was pretty good. I don't know how many times you can use that joke, but that was pretty good.
Just one time. One time. It's gone now. But like if you go too far that way, then like you're probably gonna have a harder time, selling your course or like your info product, I would imagine.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I forget. I think Neil Postman in like Entertaining Ourselves to Death, great book. a very old book. He said the medium is the message, and I think that's partially true for what we do. Which, to be specific, I think on YouTube you have to dial up the entertainment a little bit. And when you have a course or a captive audience where a student has said, like, I am going to sit down and dedicate my time, or I'm opting in to doing this thing, you can lean more towards educational and away from entertainment. And then, each platform dictates a certain type of content. Twitter is currently dictating a very different type of content than it used to. And you have to kind of shape or mold your content to the platform. Otherwise, it's not really going to work, which is one of the things I really like about having courses that are off platform, right? That are not just like on Udemy, because I don't know. I've never used Udemy as a user. I've never used it as a producer, but it is a platform, and Udemy would dictate how the course is shaped. And I just don't, I don't want that. I have strong opinions on how the course, like any course, should be shaped, and people can opt in or out of that. But I don't want to be pigeonholed. Like, I have to make a course that makes sense to sell at $9.99 if I'm on Udemy or whatever. And so, I think people get frustrated when they go into a platform with a message that doesn't match the platform. And so you go onto YouTube and you make a really like in-depth, detailed, kind of dry video, and it bombs, and everybody's like, YouTube people are stupid. And it's like, I don't know if I would go that far. I think what you're competing with is a lot of really entertaining stuff, whether that's the Primogen or Mr. Beast. Like, you're competing with entertainers, and that's not to say that you should produce content that you aren't proud of or like that you don't want to produce, but you do, like, you either have to look at the platform and say, like, what does this platform dictate and how does that match up with what I want to do, and I will make that content. Or you make whatever the hell you want, but you can't get mad when the platform is like, this isn't really what we were looking for, so we're not going to push it. And I feel like people get caught in the middle where they make whatever they want, and then they get mad that, you see this on Twitter all the time now, like, the algorithm is really killing me. And it's like, sorry, like, either change or don't complain about it. I'm sorry, like, I get it, it sucks, but like, getting caught in that sticky middle is a bad spot to be in.
Yeah. So you have a lot of experience with this as well, because like, not only have you done courses off platform, you've done a bunch of stuff on YouTube. I'm kind of the same way. I don't think I've done nearly as much on YouTube as you have, but I've done a couple courses on Free Code Camp's YouTube channel that are like 7 hours long. They're like these crazy long form videos.
One video, 7 hours. Yeah. I've seen that. That's crazy.
It's wild. So I've got this Go course. We'll use it as an example. It's about 7.5 hours long. It's up on the Free Code Camp channel. It's like a full walkthrough of our Go course on Boot Dev. And it did great. Like, it's got like 700,000 views.
Amazing.
But the retention on the video is like, first 5 minutes, boom, down to like 1%. And like, that's a high performing video. 700K views is great, right? Like, it... I don't think it's that the content's bad, but like, you have to own up to this reality that like, when people are on YouTube to learn, the engagement, the dedication, the interest to come back later and not getting sucked off into another like Mr. Beast video or whatever, it's just not there. And so like, a lot of those people do actually convert and then go take the course on Boot Dev, where the retention is like way higher. It's not like 99.5% fall off in the first 5 minutes. I don't know if you've seen any patterns like that in your stuff.
I mean, almost every video I have has that fat head and then the tiny little tail on YouTube of like, people started and then they fall off. And I'm, constantly trying to make it better, but I think it's just a function of like the platform. People are kind of surfing, right? People are there and they watch it, and then like, they're looking at their phone and they're like, I'm not going to watch this anymore. And they switch away. And yeah, that's too bad. I got to make better content, but like, it's okay. I think that's just how the platform works. Now, on something like a course, I don't track how many videos people have watched or like if they completed the course or whatever. I see other people online lamenting like, oh, I don't know how to get my students to finish the course. And I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care. I think what I really care about is, did the student get what they wanted? And if what they wanted, on the very low end, if what they wanted was a feeling of accomplishment by buying a thing, okay, well, it's not really my role to say no. If they want to support me by buying a thing and never watch it, well, I guess, thank you. That's really nice. But I think more what I care about is, did you watch 3 out of the 80 videos and solve your problem and you went away as happy as could be? That's great. I'm really happy for you. And so the way that I try to judge that is by like reaching out to people that have purchased the course and asking, hey, did you like it? Can I get a testimonial if you did? And reading what comes back. Because if I get a lot of people coming back saying like, I tried to watch it and I couldn't get through it, oof, that's a bad sign. If I get people coming back and they're like, hey, I haven't watched very much of it, but the stuff that I watched was super helpful and I like implemented it that day. Okay, that's great. I'm not a completionist with courses, and I think as long as the students get what they want and I'm able to produce what I think is the right content, then I'm very happy. And being off platform really helps that, like being able to produce what I decide is the right content. And maybe I'm wrong, but at least I get to decide.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, I've got a question. With High Performance SQLite, I've seen a couple of the tweets that you've done, like screenshots of the videos and stuff. It looked to me like, I mean, there's like a lot of videos. There's like a lot of videos. Yeah. What's like the average length of the individual videos in the course?
Oh, yeah. They're, I want to say they're relatively short. I would guess between, it's hard to, you asked for an average. I'm going to give you an average that is a range, which doesn't make any sense. But I think the average is probably 3 to 9 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
So they're not terribly long. And that lines up with a teaching philosophy that I have, which is like, I want to introduce 1 or 2 things per video and land the plane. Because I do consider sitting through a 40-minute video, one is intimidating. If I look down in the course list and I'm like, shoot, that one's 40 minutes. I'll have 40 minutes right now. It's intimidating to even start. And then once you get started, if you're doing it for 40 minutes, you're teaching 15 different things. And that is not the way that I like to do it. I like to teach one thing and then in the next video, potentially say why that thing is like good, bad, or indifferent, or improve on the performance, or show a way that we can build upon that. So I try to keep each video like as tight as I can, and that means I end up with a lot of videos, which I'm really happy about. I think that makes it bite-sizable,
Yeah. I'm fully on board with that. On Boot Dev, we break things up into like tiny bite-sized lessons as well. It's just these like giant walkthroughs on YouTube.
I know. I want to do one, massive. But I don't understand who watches them, and that's always something that's hard for me. Is like, if I can't put myself in the shoes of the person consuming it, well, how do I create it in a compelling way? I just don't understand, and it works. Like, you see these 8-hour tutorials on YouTube, and they've got 1 million views, and I don't get it.
Well, like, as a creator of several of them, not that, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of other creators. I'm sure they have their own opinions, but like, my view of it is a lot of people watch these, and it's really hard to get lessons that you like take away from them, because my worry, of course, is that a lot of people are kind of just zoning out in front of them. Right. Watching me do the lessons, watching me solve the problems.
Right.
And so I think like the people that are really getting the most value are the ones that are actually like pausing the video, going away, doing lessons on their own, building their own projects. Like, I think it's a great way to get people interested in the topic. But like, I think very few people just like watch my 7-hour course on Go and then feel like, an advanced Go developer at that point. Like, it's just not realistic. You've got to write a ton of code and build a ton of stuff before that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I'm just surprised that there are millions of people like that. Like, that you can get 1 million views on an 8-hour video it just boggles my mind. But I do want to try it. I think at some point I'll have some idea for a course that's like, this shouldn't be paid. Like, this there's not enough like I don't know. I don't know if it's like not enough secret sauce or not enough commercial reasoning or whatever, or if I'm just like out being magnanimous and being like, oh, I'm going to be Dale Carnegie and build 1 million libraries, and my version of that is make one course free. I don't know, but I want to try it. I want to try it, and I want to see how it works for me. But boy, it seems even intimidating to produce that kind of content.
So one other question I had about High Performance SQLite is the individual videos, are they like all in like linear order, or do people kind of hop in and just like take the bits and pieces that they're interested in? Because that would also, I think, influence how you think about like success in terms of how far people are getting into the content.
Yeah, they all build on each other in one way or another. It is structured such that you are expected, or I expect you to watch it linearly. That being said, the way that plays out in practice is I don't explain. So let's say early on we talk about data types in SQLite because they're kind of wonky. And then later we're doing something else, and I'll say, you may remember that this data type does this, or, whatever. I'm not going to go into a full description of it. I am going to say, I will reference a previous video, but I'm not going to like rehash. I just expect you to either know it, which is fine, or have watched it already, so you have some frame of reference. And that goes back to like the videos being small and discrete. They build on each other. And so if you pop into a video of like, the second or third or fourth video in the advanced queries section, it's likely you're popping into the middle of a query that we have already written in a previous thing. And it's like, great, now that we know these 3 things, let's look at this holistically and rewrite it all together. So yeah, I expect people to watch it linearly, which is another advantage of being off platform, is I can kind of like, whether they do or not, I can hold that true in my mind.
Which I really appreciate that in a course. I think a lot of students struggle with like hopping into a platform and just not knowing where to start, right? Yes, like not knowing where the first thing is, the second thing is, like, oh, duh, you should understand basic data structures before you learn databases because you need to know what a binary tree, like you don't know any of that, right? Yep. So I really appreciate when the instructor takes the time to lay everything out in order. And one thing that I've found, I don't know if you've received this kind of feedback yet, but so boot dev is all linear, and not just like the lessons in the course are linear, but like we've arranged all the courses linearly, kind of like a CS program, but without the branching. So it's just like a straight line. And only like half of the students actually take it in somewhat linear order, because there's no like, it doesn't force you to. So we have a lot of like more advanced students that hop in and just kind of like do one course.
Yep.
And it makes it really hard, like you were saying earlier, to like measure success, because like that person joined, got a membership, and just took like the one course that they came to take, like the Docker course, for example, and then bounced, not because they didn't like the course, but just like that's what they came for. And
right, they're probably thrilled to death that they got exactly what they wanted.
Yeah. And so I assume that happens as well. Like you have people hopping in that know quite a bit about SQLite, but there's like a handful of advanced stuff that they really just wanted to take.
Yep, I think so. And that's why I don't measure it, because you would look at your stats and be like, oh, this person completed, the 8th course, but didn't do 1 through 7 or 9 through 15. God, we've got to gamify this stuff. And you're like, whoa, hang on. You got to talk to that person and see if they got exactly what they wanted and they're happy and you made their life better. And now they don't need the rest of it. Yeah, sure. Everything needs to be gamified. But like those stats would lie to you. Like if what you're optimizing for is number of videos watched, then that is a good stat. But if what you're optimizing for is consumer happiness, that's a bad measurement. Like number of videos watched is a bad measurement, which is why I don't even bother with it.
Yeah, it's really important to figure out, I think, like whenever you've got a project, or even to zoom out to like a business, to have like 1, maybe 2 quantitative metrics you look at, and then like it's really the qualitative that's going to be more important for a long, long time.
Yes.
We've got one stat that we really care about. We've got like some analytics stuff that we look at, but like really there's just one number that we all like internally at Boot Dev look at, and that's just number of lessons completed on the platform. Because like that correlates for us at least because of the way our platform works. That correlates to like everything else that's positive. Like if there are lots of lessons are being completed, it means people are getting farther into the courses. It means that more people are coming onto the platform in the first place. Like all of them kind of loosely correlate, and it means that we don't have to get into this like weird analysis paralysis of like trying to dive into like 100 different metrics. As long as that number go up, we happy.
Yeah, and that's great. That's an amalgamation of everything that matters to you. It's user growth, it's courses on the platform, so instructor growth and user retention. It's like all three of those kind of wrapped up into one like amorphous blob, and that feels nice. Like if that number goes up, then one of those three numbers went up, and that's a good thing. So I like that.
But like when we were smaller, we didn't even have that metric, and all we did was talk to people. Right? Like all we did was talk to people in the Discord or via email or on calls, like to see what they thought. And I think way too many businesses like try to jump into the numbers game too fast. It's like just fucking talk to like everybody, like a lot.
Yep. Our like for so I have a partner at Try Hard, which is the name of our company. So for me and Steve, the number that we want to go up is US dollars in the bank account. That is our number go up. Because like at the end of the day, that is our North Star, especially because we're so early. I mean, goodness sakes, we started this like what, 3, 4, 5 months ago, probably 4. And the whole game right now for us is this a viable business? And if we get lots of people, we get lots of like hype and vibes and stuff, and nobody pays us, then no, it's not a viable business.
Right.
So that's what we're focused on right now. And the way to do that, kind of like you were talking about, there are downstream effects to that number. How many YouTube videos do we put out will drive that number? How many courses do we have? Definitely going to drive that number. How good? Things that you can't even quantify, like how good is the SQLite course? That makes the number go up, because if people watch it and they're like, oh, it's really good, I'm going to tell somebody, and then they watch it, like that makes number go up. And so that's what we're focused on at this point. And I think at some point that'll change when we have enough money to like pay ourselves a nice salary. Then beyond that, it'll be interesting to decide what is number, because right now number is dollars, and that seems reasonable.
Yeah, no, the dollar number definitely matters. Otherwise you can't pay your people, and you can't dedicate
being
your
the
own time
people.
to it.
Yes, being the people myself, I would love to get paid. So yeah, we need that number to go up.
Okay, so I've got a question about TryHard. So TryHard Studios is like, you and Steve. And you've got High Performance SQLite. That's on its own domain, right? Are you considering building more courses on other domains under the TryHard brand? Are you trying to like, are you gonna like reuse the platform? Like, I'm thinking of Wes Boss in my head. Like, this is a very Wes Boss style thing to do, right? He's got like 7 different websites, one per project. What are the plans?
That is the plan. We're doing the Wes Boss. So it started out with so a while back I did screencasting.com, which is a course on making video. That has since been folded into the TryHard enterprise. So we have 2 courses, High Performance SQLite and screencasting.com, forthcoming Postgres course, then probably a MySQL course. And so we're on the course train. For High Performance SQLite, we sent all emails in the beginning. We sent all emails from highperformancesqlite.com. Okay. And I think that was the default. It's like, you signed up on this website, we're going to send you emails from this website. Don't overthink it. That worked fine. Like
high performance SQLite than screencasting.com, or were the numbers comparable?
Which numbers? Signups or dollars?
Signups. Well, I mean, I guess both would be interesting, but I'm thinking of like the newsletter in particular.
Yeah, I think we've got like 5,000 or 6,000 on High Performance SQLite. And I launched screencasting.com to like 800.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, I don't know what the numbers are at this point. I'm inclined to say that SQLite is still much, much bigger, but yeah, the launch list for screencasting was just minuscule compared to High Performance SQLite, and it still made a bunch of money. So yeah, people sign up on High Performance SQLite, we throw them into Bento, which is our email provider. Everyone goes into the same bucket. So regardless of where you signed up for any product I've ever offered, you go into Bento and you just get a tag. So it's not like on the back end, I hosed myself by putting everybody in separate MailChimp accounts and now I'm just like totally dorked and I got to like merge and deduplicate or anything. I thought I was smart enough to think ahead on that one. But I thought like, yeah, I'll keep these lists, like these sending domains, somewhat separate. And since that time, Steve and I have talked a lot, including on the podcast my podcast with Ian. We've talked, he and I have talked a lot on there, and I've talked to some friends, including like Kent C. Dodds and Adam Wathen, trying to figure out like, hey, what's everybody doing? And it has settled on the West Boss. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do the West Boss. And so what's going to happen is every email is going to be sent from aaronfrancis.com. So that has a couple of benefits. One is that domain is 25 years old. If I'm 35, which I think I am, I think that domain's like 25 years old because my dad bought it
that
for
domain
me
when you were 10?
I was a kid. My dad bought it for me. Yeah.
Oh.
My dad was a computer guy back in the day. And so I've got
cool.
aaronfrancis.com.net.org. My brother has jonathanfrancis.com.net.org. So he bought them all for like all of us and have just had it ever since. So aged domain, really great. And then I think beyond like the technical ramifications, something that Steve and I have talked about a lot is building brands is difficult. And so yes. I have a brand. The brand is Aaron Francis, but it is a brand, right? And so if we're going to build High Performance SQLite into a brand, seems like a waste. What if we put it all under TryHard? That's not a brand. That's a company that has no brand, that nobody knows anything about. It's a holding company that nobody's going to freaking care about. What people care about is other humans, and I happen to be one. And so we've decided to like double down on, as reluctant as I am about this, we're doubling down on I am the brand. And it makes me feel... Yeah, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I have always considered myself a creator or like a maker. And like from the early days, from like childhood, I've been a creator / maker. And I think in the past 2 or 3 years, people have looked at me with a like creator / influencer thing. And what like doubling down on me being a brand feels like an influencer move, and that makes me nervous. I don't like it. I don't want to be an influencer. I want to be a creator, a maker, someone that like makes a lot of content, sure, but also like somebody who has their hands in like the stuff that they're doing. I don't want to be out of touch with the craft. I actually like practicing the craft, and I don't want to offer opinions on things that I don't know about. And so this is another thing that is like very influencer coded, is people will always ask me like, hey, what's your take on PHP versus Go? And I'm like, well, I use PHP and I don't use Go. What now? Like, that's it. That's all I've got. And so, I'm a little reluctant about it just because it feels a little egotistical, but I think it makes perfect sense for a few reasons. One is that's what the market demands. Like, I don't know how many, but some portion of the people bought the course just because they like me. Yeah. And so like people want to be like in this like community. And so I think we are going to move all emails sending from aaronfrancis.com. We're going to centralize course login to something like courses.aaronfrancis.com. We're going to have forums on aaronfrancis.com. So like I'm bringing the forum back.
Are you kicking your partner to the curb? It's Aaron's.
Exactly.
It's Aaron's.
Exactly.
Brand.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So that's the hard part. And, you know, this is one of the things that Steve and I talked about. Like when we first got started, I would like, I would write up a tweet and then I would call Steve and be like, hey, so here's the tweet. It says I in a bunch of places, but I know that like, you are doing a big part of this. And he was like, hang on, I do not care. Like he has been pushing for me to like step out further, and he wants to stay kind of in the background. And he's like, I have no desire to grow a personal brand, to grow an audience or anything. He's like, I want us to win, and the best way to do that is for you to be the face of the company. And so, yeah, that's a
You're
big
like
part
the
of it.
chosen one.
Yeah, I mean, between me and Steve, I am. And that's a big part of it, is I'm sensitive to the fact that I don't do any of this alone. And to have it all be like the Aaron Francis show makes me feel icky. But I think with some thoughtfulness and communication and knowing the fact that this is like what Steve wants is important, but also what is best for the business, and we both agree on that, is pretty crucial. And so, yeah, it's like, yeah, this is a try hard joint, but in fact, you may never know that. It's just going to say Aaron Francis everywhere, which is like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah. So I got to apologize to the audience because I don't care, but like, we're just talking business this whole podcast.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't care. It's going to be fun. And if you don't like business, sorry, you can skip this one. But I'm having too much fun. If you ever want to like chat about business, marketing, strategy stuff, we should talk offline, because I love to do that. I love to do that kind of stuff. But okay, so here's my perception of some of the things you've hit on. Wes Boss, Kent C. Dodds, Aaron Francis. It definitely feels like, yeah, the play is like personal brand. Like, you're the brand, you've got a bunch of projects, they'll all have their own domains. They'll kind of have like a mini sub brands to each project, but it's like you're the brand. So it makes perfect sense to me that you'd kind of consolidate the email lists. I know exactly what you mean when you say like, I don't want to be the brand. Like, I'd rather put the project first. And for me, it's nice because I'm not as good of an influencer as the rest of you. And so I've been making like a concerted effort to step back and like put the Boot Dev brand forward. And so I feel like you and I were in a similar decision-making point at some point. And I took the opposite route.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. The decision-making in my head went like this. I think it will be easier to get started if I do more of a personal brand, because people like people. Like, people like to follow people rather than, like, people don't like companies. People like people. But then I think down the road it becomes easier because you're disconnected from the brand. So, like, for example, if you wanted to, like, partner with somebody or sell the company or just, like, grow and bring in other creators, then, like, the brand... It's easier at that point that you have like kind of this umbrella brand rather than it just being attached to yourself.
Yep. Yeah, that's something that we've super talked about, is like, is any of this sellable? And there's an open question as to whether courses are sellable or not, frankly. I mean, I don't know. After the big spike, the launch spike is over, you've accumulated probably 70, hopefully less, but probably 70 or 80% of the benefits. So who's going to buy out a course? And I'm in all the videos. Like, yeah, it's still me, man. So yeah, in that regard, I don't think I don't think the business apart from my personal brand is super sellable. Like, not as it exists today. Maybe along the way we stumble into a SaaS offering or like some other thing. And that would be something that we would consider still leveraging my brand for, but not tying it technologically to my brand. So if we started a SaaS, we would send emails from the SaaS, but yeah, I don't know that we're sacrificing too much by going with the personal brand, because I think that gives us highest leverage on a thing that is not sellable anyway. And so it's like, well, it's moot. It's moot that it's now under my brand because it wasn't sellable in the first place.
That's very like Drip by Rob Walling, right? Like he made this SaaS, and like, sure, he brought in a ton of people because he's got this media influence. Right. But at the end of the day, like, it's drip. Like, if you want an email product and you like drip, like, you're just going to stick with drip. Otherwise, like, it's probably not interesting to you. So
yeah, and he's said many times, as I'm sure you've heard, that like his personal brand contributed very little to drip. Many tens of users, probably. I think that's probably a little.
It's probably an understatement, but yeah,
downplaying it a little bit. But he would say that like, you know, the regular business stuff brought in all the users. But it just, you can't overstate early on how important having many tens of users is. Like, that gets you in the game. And so I still think it's important, but I don't want anyone to hear this and be like, oh, I got to build a personal brand. 0% true. You 100% do not have to do that. Depending on your business model. If you're going to do SaaS, you don't need it at all. If you're going to do courses where people are buying the thing because they know, like, and trust you, well, I got bad news.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting that you say that. First of all, I completely agree. I think way too many people overvalue the value of an audience when they're building product, right? Like, most companies building product don't have an influencer founder. They just kind of, either they work with influencers or they do paid advertising, or like there's a billion ways to advertise a product that's good that doesn't involve like you personally having a huge blog or a huge social media influence. Right with you there. I do agree as well that if you're doing an info product like a course, that the audience is more important than like the SaaS thing. But I can also very confidently say that, at least with Boot Dev, less than 10% of our customers, in fact, probably less than 5% of our customers come through me. Again, I'm not a big influencer or anything, but like even those types of businesses, if you have, and I would argue Boot Dev is very far down the list in terms of like, it's not a SaaS, but it's also not an outright info product in the sense that it's like a very interactive thing. It's like there's maybe a little bit of that to it, but I guess all I'm saying is, even so, I feel like if you have a product that you really love and that, you know, your users really love, you can still get around not having an audience, because there's other ways to get the word out.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you are building an info product, the way to build an audience is easy. You just talk about the thing that you're building all the time. I mean, you can kind of come by it honestly. Like, if you're doing a course on Elixir, then just like write blog posts and tweet and make videos about Elixir all day long, and you know who's going to follow you? Elixir people. And so it's like, this is something that I've found myself being on about recently, is like growing an audience of indiscriminate followers is useless. And that's like, I tweeted something the other day about like meme-based marketing for companies is risky, because I feel like it attracts as many people as it alienates. Like, it annoys a lot of people. And I think a lot of people will look at big accounts or like successful accounts or quickly growing accounts and copy their strategy without digging into what is the quality of the follower. And when I say that, I mean quality based on what are you trying to do. Like, there's no difference in quality between humans, but if somebody that is using Elixir follows me for PHP stuff, that's not a good match for me, right? And so that's to my end, that is a low quality follower, because that kind of person is never going to like engage with anything that I'm doing. They're probably going to be annoyed by me talking about PHP all the time. And so they may mute me or they may unfollow me. And it's like, guys, you have to think about... Or Twitter will just
stop showing them your stuff, because like that's how these algorithms work, right?
Yeah. And so he scrolls past my content and Twitter's like, Aaron's content sucks. And it's like, no, it was never for this person. And so when I see people like, I'm just going to tweet memes all day long, you know who's going to follow you? People that like memes. People that like memes. And then you stop dancing as the monkey, and people are like, why? You keep dancing. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Give me more memes, man. And so I feel like this whole like chasing audience at all costs without being thoughtful is pretty endemic, and is just like a failing or poorly thought out strategy.
Agreed. And I also want to add just one of my own tidbits to something you said just a little bit ago. You said, growing an audience is easy if you're building an info product, because you just share kind of the info. And my only take there would be, I would say it's simple, but definitely not easy.
Yes,
in the
very
sense that
true.
the strategy is simple, right?
Correct.
Like take your content, make interesting stuff out of it, share it. Great strategy. Really hard to do. Take Aaron's course on screencasting might help.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're totally right. And I think where a lot of people get hung up is they're like, I have to have a content calendar and plan what I'm gonna say, and I'm like, that's great if that's how your brain works. More power to you. I think you need to tune your brain. I think you need to tune your brain to notice tweets as you're working. Like, you need to be working and doing something, and your content comes out of something interesting you just did, something you learned, something stupid you just did is always great. And you just go on Twitter and you say, just learned this about Elixir, or man, I ran into that and I have no idea how I'm going to fix it. Like, you need to even keep a scratch pad next to you while you're working. Be like, I'm pretty proud of that. That was clever. I'm going to write down that little clever thing I did. I'm going to workshop a tweet on that later. And I think that is the part that is simple, is like, it should come out of the stuff you're already doing, which is why it's so easy for me to tweet, because tweeting is a byproduct of doing something else. If I were focused all the time on like writing good tweets, I would feel really anxious, because I'm like, from whence does the spring well, right? It's coming from nowhere. But if I'm just doing stuff all day long, it's like I have no shortage of stuff that I could share. And in fact, I have to hold myself back because I don't want to tweet 8 times a day.
I'm not going to say any names, but I have several Twitter accounts in my head where, like, at least to me, it's really obvious that the people behind those accounts don't actually do much day-to-day technical work.
Yeah, I know.
And not just because the content they're sharing is like extremely shallow and like kind of the stuff you'd see on like Our Programmer Humor, but also like the comments and the follow-up conversations are extremely shallow. And you could tell. And I'll give the opposite. The opposite is one of our mutual friends, Dax. Like, you can tell. You could tell this guy actually does shit day to day.
Yep.
He's also an asshole on Twitter.
He is. He's got a character, and he adheres to it tightly.
Yes. I think he's very nice in real life, but
he is
on Twitter he is. That's definitely his personal brand. But like, you can tell, like, when he tweets, there's something behind what he's saying, and I appreciate that. And that brings me all the way around to just a point I want to emphasize, because a lot of people are listening to this podcast that have very little interest in building a business at the moment, maybe in the future, right? There a lot of people are kind of trying to get a first job as a developer, particularly as a backend developer. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I'd also just want to emphasize, that I've emphasized on this podcast before, is my personal belief is that if you don't need an audience to build a product, and you don't need an audience even to build an info product, you really probably don't need an audience to get a first job as a developer. If you like tweeting and you like sharing stuff on social, I don't want to discourage you in any way. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. But like, please don't take away from this episode that like you need to have a Twitter strategy to get your first job as a programmer.
Yes, I will. Yes, and you. So we're gonna do some proper what is that, improv here. Yes, I agree. And however, so I agree. You don't need a following to get a job. I feel like that's silly to even think that. Like, that's not what recruiters care about. I will say, however, it can be extremely helpful when you're trying to get a job if you can point to things that you have done that are accessible via the internet. And so you can just take Twitter out of it altogether. You don't even have to be on Twitter. However, having a project that you did by yourself or with a friend that you took from composer install, that's PHP, or like, whatever y'all do, create React app or whatever. If you took that from your computer to a URL that some recruiter can like go and load, that's going to put you ahead of maybe 95% of people. If you can say, look, here's a blog post that I published on my own domain or Medium or Dev2 or whatever, doesn't even matter. Here's a blog post that I published. Here's a little side project I built that never went anywhere. It got no users. I built the whole freaking thing. Doesn't matter. You did a thing. Here's a podcast I was on, or I started because I wanted to talk to people, or here's a video I made once that is low quality, but like I decided I was going to do it anyway. all of those things are going to put you way, way, way ahead of people that just have a resume that's like, I promise I did this at this company, but there's no one you can ask about it, you know?
I would go so far as to say there is a bar that it's pretty insane not to at least pass this bar of like putting your work, right? Your projects, stuff you've built, and made it easily accessible, and not just that it's there. I've had a lot of students and a lot of people that are applying to jobs that I've been kind of the hiring manager on, like link me a GitHub repo, and it's just like the default README.
Yep.
And like, you expect me to like click through your code files? Like, no thanks.
No thanks.
Just make it presentable, right? Again, that doesn't mean it needs to be this beautiful, immaculate thing, but like I would rather read 2 paragraphs of text explaining what the project is, and then maybe invest my time in cloning the repo or poking around for code quality stuff. But like, I don't want my first step to be digging through your code. I'm probably just gonna like move on to the next applicant.
Yeah, and if you send me, I'm not hiring, but if you send me a link to your GitHub profile with like 16 starter projects, and there's one in there that you like have been hacking on, I don't know which one. I don't know which one you cloned from a course and which one you're actively pursuing. Don't ever just throw it over the wall. You have to imagine that the recruiter is trying to get through 100 or 200 or 500 resumes, and so whether or not it's fair is irrelevant. You have to put in some effort to be like, here's my best offering, and it's going to take you 4 seconds to figure out what it is. If it takes you more than 4 seconds, well, you're starting to put yourself at a disadvantage. So like, give me the overview, link me to the direct repo. In fact, link me to a file where you think you did something clever, and I can just go look at that file and be like, oh, well, the guy knows Laravel. That's good. That's a good start. Maybe I wouldn't do it that way. It doesn't matter. They did something, and they showed me the thing that they did, and so that like lowers some of the doubts I have in my mind that everyone like is lying on their resume. I'm like, well, look, it's right there. They just pointed to it. I can see it. So, yeah, I think you have to be a little bit empathetic to the person on the other side and give them the value as quickly as possible, because it's a sales pitch. You're selling yourself, and you got to let them like taste it as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'm just going to yes this one because I think it's super important. It is such a career hack. That's like the cringy influencer way that we're going to cut this up and like post it somewhere. But there's this career hack where if you want someone to do something for you, the more that you can just like do it yourself and then kind of like get their sign off or like get their approval or get them to do like the last step, like, again, it's such a hack, right? So like, instead, like the example of the resume is a great one. Instead of just handing someone a resume and linking them your GitHub profile, right? It's really great if you take the exact project that you wanted them to see, put a description of it in the resume with like a clickable hyperlink, right? They go straight to it right when they get there. Oh, there's a link to the demo. Like, you're just taking steps out of the process. And it's not just about getting jobs. It's like, this applies to everything. Like, anytime you want something from your boss, right? If you can do the 90% that you're able to do so that you can go to them and just get the sign off, right? Hey, I already did this. Did this. I think it's a really good idea. Can we just ship it, right? Is way better than going to them and be like, hey, I think we should do this, and adding something to their plate. Like, I don't know. I've worked with so many people, and it feels like less than 20% of them have internalized this idea of like,
yes,
I'm going to do the thing to get it over the finish line. Most people don't. And if you're one of those people that do that, I think you'll go pretty far.
Yep. Nobody wants to do anything. And so like, this applies to trying to get a job or trying to get a promotion or take on a project at work. It also applies to like your children and your spouse. Like, it's so much easier for me to go to my kids who are 3 and say like, do you want this or this? And they say this. And it's like, great. I have narrowed the universe of choices. I have presented you with 2 that seem reasonable to me. Now you decide. That works on a 3-year-old. It also works on a 35-year-old. When my wife comes to me and is like, what color should we paint the bathroom? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. Like, there's a lot of colors out there. But if she comes to me and she's like, here's one, here's the other. I'm like, oh, I like the other. The other is great. It's like, just narrowed the scope of like what I have to emotionally like, the bar to which I have to overcome with my emotions of, I don't know what colors exist in the world. Boy, are you asking me a lot versus that one is better than the first one. It's like, this applies everywhere. Nobody wants to do that legwork. Me, the recruiter, the hiring manager, nobody wants to do it. So do it for them, and it goes a super long way.
I've had employees that I've been managing come to me and say, hey, for this feature, I need to send an email. How do we do that? Right? How do I send an email? Versus, I've had other employees come to me, hey, I looked into it. We don't send emails yet. Should we do Bento or SendGrid? Right? Like all of a sudden it's like way easier for me to be like, oh, like I've used SendGrid in the past. Like, yeah, let's just do it. Versus like, oh, okay. All right. Let me add that to my to-do list to like research
yes, exactly.
how we're doing this internally and what we need to take as a next step.
Carry this emotional burden of figuring all this out for you. Yeah. When I was, so a long time ago when I was a manager, there was, I managed a lot of non-technical people. And so people would come to me with these problems, and my first and only response usually was, okay, well, what have you tried so far? And the answer was usually nothing. Oh, I don't know. I just got stuck, and I just came into your office. This was back in the day. I just came into your office and asked you the question. Okay, I'm always here to help. Why don't you go try some things and then come back and tell me what did or didn't work, and we can then, figure it out together. But there's I learned this from I don't know if it was Joel Spolsky or somebody else wrote an article a super long time ago called What Have You Tried? And it was basically saying anytime someone comes to me with a technical problem, my answer is always going to be, what have you tried? Not as like a jerk, but like, give me the context for things that maybe have or haven't worked, and show me that you have thought about how you could solve this on your own. You don't have to solve it on your own, but if you come to me and you say, I have tried nothing and I want you to fix it for me, start over.
You want to take problems off of people's plates. And it's not just about internally at a company. Like we said, it applies everywhere.
Yep.
Whew. This has been fun. I feel like we went everywhere. We didn't talk too much about SQLite, but
it's all right.
Everyone listening to this, everyone listening to this podcast kind of knows what SQLite is. If you're interested in high performance SQLite, then do I have a domain for you?
It's not aaronfrancis.com. It's highperformancesqlite.com. You may get emails from aaronfrancis.com.
Yeah. Cool. Well, again, thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to just take a second, plug all your projects, plug your podcast, just make sure that everyone listening that's interested and thinks you're funny and charismatic knows where to find you?
Sure. Yeah. We'll do a little My First Million thrill of the shill, which is just, God, they're just so good at coming up with names. So let's see. On Twitter, Aaron D. Francis, D as in Daniel, and then aaronfrancis.com, and then High Performance SQLite. If you're into SQLite, there's like 65 videos there. I'm working on the next set. There's probably going to be 15 or 20 more. Screencasting.com if you want to learn how to make high quality video super fast. And then if you're interested in basically this kind of talk, me and a friend have a podcast called Mostly Technical at mostlytechnical.com, where every week we talk about some mix of his business, my business, and basically Seinfeld topics, like what do you mean when you say next Friday? Like what day do you actually mean when you say next Friday? So stuff like that. So mostlytechnical.com if you want to listen to the banter.
Oh wait, hold on. I forgot to say something. This is one of the last episodes of season 1 of this podcast, just so everyone who's listening is aware. I don't actually know which one it is because we record these in advance, but the end is near on season 1. So just expect that. Hopefully it's not literally this episode, or else this will be awkward.
We'll find out together.
Okay. See ya.
Bye.